Welcome to the Sankofa Pan-African series. Now, No Heaven for Good Boys was set in Senegal, West Africa. It tells the story of a young boy, Ibrahima, who is a Talib, who is trying to survive in Dakar, Senegal, after he was sent there to live with a Marabu. You know, what you've done, was you painted this picture of this boy from like any regular family with parents, siblings who loved him, but
Yeah.
then show how because of some warped sense of religion, this boy is gonna be oh, it's it's amazing, and I do know from working with women and young children in Nigeria that most of these practices, of course, harmful practices are because people believe they usually ascribe them to religion or tradition.
Yeah.
Practices like female genital mutilation, and of course this one of sending children off to go and live with a marabout or
Yeah.
other religious leaders. They believe it's building. Apart from the fact that they actually believe that Islam compels them to do it, they also believe it builds characters, and it's insane. Which is why I think what you did with the mother's character, I just love what, because his mom, you know, in spite of the pressures of
Mhm.
tradition, religion, she resists.
Yes.
She resists. So, what was the inspiration for her? Did you actually meet a woman like that? I'm asking this because I know that there's a lot of misconception out there about African women, especially at the grassroots level, as being
Mhm.
no voice and all of that. So, what inspired Maimuna's?
Absolutely. So much. Maimuna represents so much, and I love her. So when I'm back in the U.S., I'm living in New York City, which was where I was living before I went, and the story of the Taliban comes forward. And I don't know the full story because I had my interactions with the boys a little bit. That was just like a tad that I read in the paper while I was in Senegal, not much. And so when I tried to do research, there wasn't a lot, but I did find a story of this grassroots nonprofit that and they do exist, and I think there are more of them now that try to return Taliban home, right? And that happens, and it's not as much as we would like, as many as we would like,
Mhm.
but it happens. And in this particular situation, the organization helped the Marabou find another career, because a lot of these men are becoming marabouts because it's financially beneficial.
They don't have to work. They have those kids to slave for them.
Exactly. It is a business venture.
It is.
Okay. And so, but the tradition is you cannot return a boy before he memorizes the Quran, but the boys can't memorize the Quran if they're begging 12 to 16 hours a day. So this Marabou gets another career, I think, like with fishing or farming. And this Taliban is returned home to his village. And the father didn't accept him returning home because it was like embarrassing. It was, you know,
Failure.
exactly. So an
There
aunt,
must, there might also be taboos attached to it. They might even believe the child might not survive. I mean,
exactly,
religion warps the mind if one is not careful.
which is why it's so powerful when you're abusing it, when you're an
Yeah,
abuser with it.
yeah.
And so what happened in this particular village is an aunt who lived in the village agreed to allow the boy to live with her. But she lives like literally next door to the parents. And
Hmm.
so when she said yes, they went back to the father and said, "Is this acceptable?" And he said yes. And it's then that the mother spoke up.
Mm.
She was like, I'm so relieved to have my son back home. You know, I wanted to go along with what my husband wanted, but I really wanted my child home. And I'm very, very happy about this. And that brought me to this place where I said, hey, you know, and I was hearing stories of parents who did not want to give their kids, but they were being pressured about being a good Muslim.
Mm.
So I'm like, this story is deeper and way more complex. And the truth is no parent wants their children to be beggars.
Mm.
I don't care what world, what country, what continent, what your religion is, what your beliefs are. That is the one thing that parents don't say. I'm going to have some kids so they can go and be beggars. It's usually something else propelling them to do that, right? And so I realized Maimuna represents Senegalese women and African women who do not want this happening to their children, but are being sort of held and forced to accept it for patriarchal, traditional, or religious reasons.
And in some instances, like the cases we have in Nigeria also, illiteracy and the poverty. Some of the parents are also, they've had way too many children than they can cope with. And there's always this tradition that allows them to send some off to go and beg for the malam and things like that. So it's really complicated.
It is. I didn't realize it until recently, I would say within the last year or two. And, this first draft was written in 2010 and I rewrote the book and blah, blah, blah. But Maimuna actually also represents Black American women. Because, when we go back to the days of slavery, how many children were taken and sold to other plantations and owners? And those Black mothers, those African mothers of the diaspora, were not allowed to show their grief.
No, they couldn't.
For fear of retribution.
Yeah.
Right? And so Maimuna and all of her anger and all of her resistance represents Black women across the board.
It does. And she represents well.
Yeah.
I love Maimuna. And then the title. I mean, there's very little I don't like about this book. Your title,
yes,
No Heaven for Good Boys. That's a title that sticks in your head and will never leave.
Yep. And that title, I wrote the book and then titled it. So I didn't have the title first. And when I found it, I knew it was the title because the truth is we are told to be good people. Every day, be a good person, do the right thing, turn the other cheek, right? And yet, even as we do that, we suffer in this world. And these children didn't do anything. These Taliban, these vulnerable children.
Their sin was just being born. That's all.
Exactly. And yet we're constantly told, and so the title is a play on that, right? That even being a good boy, you can live in heaven or hell here on this earth. And we're always told to push it off. Well, if you just suffer in this life, heaven will be there for you, right? And I think that there is a way to resist and decide that we can do better for ourselves and each other in this life, in this existence, right? So this title is like a call to stand up, a call for like activism almost,
It works. It works. And my last question is, you keep your sanity writing this book? It's impossible to read it without shedding a tear or two. How hard was it for you to write about such a heart-rending That
Yes.
topic.
Yes. It was so the first draft I wrote in 2010, I found a professor a year later, a writing professor and author, who told me the book was great, but I needed to rewrite it. And because the first draft, at the end of every chapter, the Taliban, the characters were eating. They were eating and they were
Mm.
happy. And my writing professor said, "Is this the reality for the boys in Dakar, in Senegal?" And I said, "No, it's
But
not."
your way of toning me down so you could so you could
Yes,
leave what was in your head, what you had
yes,
said.
which is to save them. I
I
wrote at the
know.
first draft
I
was just,
know.
I just wanted to save them. So the second draft, I'll be honest, it forced me to have to grapple with my own experiences with child abuse.
Oh.
I had to dig deep to write some of these scenes. And when you cry or you feel your heart ache in the book, I was sobbing when I wrote it, or crying when I rewrote it. And there's this one scene in the book that even when I reread it myself, I cry. And it's the scene when Maimuna, when she's a girl, uh, realizes that she's not going to school.
Mm.
Because I'm a huge, education is such a slippery slope for children across the world,
No.
especially when you come from poverty, you know, and parents taking their kids out of school, not sending them or taking them out to work. I had a good friend in Senegal who only went to the 6th or 7th grade before she had to quit school to get a job as a seamstress to help her family. And she was still a seamstress, when I met her, and she was really great at her job. But this, you know, both boys and girls across the world, education is this, it's a privilege, even though
It's a right, actually.
but it's a right.
We make it well.
Exactly.
It should be the right of every child born into this world.
Absolutely. And we would be a better world for it
Yes.
if we allowed all children to access education.
Yeah.
And that, like you said at the beginning of this interview, was a theme that drew you into it, because that is a huge theme
Yeah. Yeah.
in showing, like, at one point, Ibrahima interacts with a young girl who is inside. When we think about bars, we think if you're inside, you're trapped.
Yeah.
But inside those bars on a school ground, she has this privilege, this right, and he's on the outside of that. And it really breaks my heart, because I fought as a kid and as a young adult. I have fought for my education, but everyone is not that lucky.
Yeah. Not everyone is that lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Keisha.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I can't wait to read the next thing that's coming off your pen.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm sure we're going to be reading more from you in the near future.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being a part of the Sankofa Pan-African series.
Thank you so much, Bami. I'm so appreciative and grateful and humbled.
I'm quite sure that you enjoyed this episode with Keisha Bush. Please buy and read the novel if you've not yet done so. You will not regret it. It's an awesome book. Now, also, please feel free to share our videos with your contacts. And but I have some questions for you that I once again would like you to respond to on our community page. The first question is, did you know about talibs? Did you know who talibs were before today? Do you have similar practices in your country? What do you think we can do? Or as individuals, what do you think you can do, in your small way, to draw attention to the plight of children who are being exposed to this kind of hazardous lifestyle? Thank you very much, Keisha Bush, for being a part of the Sankofa Pan African series. I'm very sure we'll be reading more from you in the near future. Bye.